Now we live in this AI age, right, where we need to start thinking about more than just the human needs. So that's where that pivot started to happen. Like we wanted to continue to work on like high performance stack, but put that into the context of AI and agent use.
A lot of these functions, I really wouldn't mind to see them disappear in the sense of not being executed by humans anymore.
Aha moment, right? Why people are voting with their feet, going to Solana versus Ethereum. It's because you have these very differentiated features like DCA, value average on Jupyter, and all these additional features that you just can't find elsewhere.
I'm pretty happy that we first tried to make crypto mainstream before trying to make AI mainstream, because AI is a naturally centralizing technology.
The agent itself is handling all the payment and the transfer logic. So it auto kind of deduct the amount from your wallet. You only need to sign in the transaction at first to give proxy to the agent. And then it will calculate P&L in real time. And it actually also auto close your leverage within that 30 seconds.
GM, and welcome back to episode 78 of the Odyssey Pod. Today we are joined by Joanna, who is building soon. How are you doing, Joanna? Thanks a lot for joining us.
That's really amazing that you already did 78 podcasts. I actually have my own podcast, like where I invite my founder friends to talk. And so far I only were able to do like almost 30 over a course of like 3 months. So congrats. And thank you for having me on the show.
Let's start by giving some context to your background, how you found the idea of Soon, like what brought you into the overall industry at first, and then how Soon developed from a Solana L2 to what you're doing now in the x402 and Agentic payment space.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's good to kind of review that whole process. I think basically my idea at the beginning, coming from the Ethereum world, I was very much of an ETH maxi. Started as a Coinbase PM and BD PM product manager and a business development, working with the institution side, and then I got tapped on the shoulder to run the NFT marketplace. So I was very much working within the Ethereum lens only. Then the whole kind of L2 boom happened, right? With all the scaling solution coming out. And I actually ended up joining Optimism, another Ethereum camp, right? Like a project that is very much committed to scaling of Ethereum. So in that process, I started observing some issues, such as, just kind of like the same playbook that's being done, copy and paste over and over again. That whole point system, that's being run by multiple L2s, and there's not actual innovation that's happening on the chain, right? So what I was observing also from an ecosystem perspective is, these new L2s are just kind of cultivating this grand farming culture where the developers kind of jumping around from project to project, collecting those claims. But again, it's not really solving like the issue that's bringing all of us into this ecosystem in the first place, which is like, let's actually grow the overall pie, right? Not like a PvP game. So all of this is to say like the L2 thing would only work if there's a substantial amount of differentiation happening, right? And I quickly realized what's very different from the rest of the game was what's going on Solana land, right? With all the new, applications being developed on the trading side specifically, where it has a lot of PMF, given the chain underneath, right? The tech itself can support high frequency trading. So yeah, things like I started using this application myself, and that was the aha moment, right? Why people are voting with their feet, going to Solana versus Ethereum. It's because you have these very differentiated features like DCA, value average on Jupyter. That's one of the dexes with the batch trading and all these, additional features that you just can't find elsewhere. So then I came to realize that I wanted to be part of that movement, right? To make SVM or Solana Virtual Machine accessible to everybody. So started with the Soon project as an infra project to build this SVM execution SDK on top of EVM. So it's actually architecting, transplanting the SVM, what's core of it to make it accessible to folks that's already on the Ethereum side. And that was the initial idea. As we were developing these new SVM chains, one thing became really clear is now we live in a very different age. Even just within 2 years of the start of the foundations, now we live in this AI age, right? Where we need to start thinking about more than just the human needs. So that's where that pivot started to happen. Like we wanted to continue to work on like high performance stack, but put that into the context of AI and agent use. Yeah.
For those not super familiar with x402 and what agentic commerce, agentic payments, AI capital markets, if you want to call that way,
Right.
what does that actually constitute? And I think all of these narratives have received a lot of attention in the space over the past couple of weeks. Yet I think that many people do not have a concrete idea what to imagine under these buzzwords. So can you
Yeah.
shed some
Yeah.
light there?
Yeah. So let's go back to kind of like what are we all trying to accomplish, right? So, the word mass adoption kind of comes to mind almost as a cliche, right? But I think my biggest obsession here is or the biggest aha moment here is, just realizing that mass adoption doesn't necessarily need to onboard more people, but onboarding more agents, right? Like right now, I think agents count about less than 10% of the overall on-chain transactions. That number, I think in my prediction, will go to, 20% in even by year end. Just given how much everyone is working for the agents now, I don't even think agents are working for us. Yeah. So I think, going back to like, how can we make this technology actually useful, right? Instead of, again, just doing all these type of copy and pasting, same playbook kind of shit, right? So with x402 specifically, I think that's what quite clicked with me when I first heard about it, more than just buzzwords, because what x402 stands for is a HTTP standard, right? That is a underlying logic that the agent can comprehend and execute on top of. So the main, like that's a lot of jargon words, but what that really means in a, plain English is basically we can bypass these infrastructure and it's really abstracting the complexity of using a wallet, managing your key, and paying gas, basically handling all kinds of like UX blockage, right? That you have to deal with, like dealing with the pop-up window to sign the transaction every 2 seconds, that kind of thing. Just using a single signature flow and gasless and very simplified UX, right? So simple that you don't even need to know what chain you're interacting with. So all of this is it's what's making payments, especially micro payments, possible in this day and age. So so I think the x402 promise here is how can we make it in that is more than just a niche idea for these developers, right? Right now, right? I think the marketing messaging right now, quite frankly, it's a bit too narrow, right? I think the proposer here, obviously Coinbase, right? They're the first inventor of this mechanism. So given their background, given their cloud, they're going after the big enterprise use cases, big payment companies that, we come to be familiar with in the Web2 world and get them to start adopting it. That is certainly one way. But what I'm really obsessed with is how can we bring these, the power of everything I mentioned, right? Simplification, lower onboarding barrier to the existing like consumer today. So we started really working on the application side, sort of did a pretty big pivot, right? From just focusing on infra to building applications, leveraging X4.
Where does Soon as a chain and as a technology stack come into that?
Mhm.
why, if I want to build something related to agentic payments, related to x402, why build on Soon? Why not deploy on Base or on Solana or any
Gotcha.
of the other chains that are around?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I want to be maybe more clear about how does Soon fit into the overall X402 agentic payment stack now, right? So this also come from a very honest, like honestly, like a experiment, um, not a very single linear, kind of a projection here. So we actually started with a quick like prediction game called 10S, 10 seconds, short for 10 seconds soon, right? 10S, and it's basically prediction of the trading movement of, let's say Bitcoin as an asset, right? Like the next 10 seconds of Bitcoin movement, up or down, right? You just very binary outcome. You just make a quick prediction, and you can see, where that falls, and auto mints a token for you if your guess is right. So that game was the first kind of real use case beyond, I'm actually proud to say this, beyond like a meme coin kind of use case for consumer as far as X42 is concerned, right? Everything else at that point was focusing on like building the infrastructure piece, right, for the enterprises. So we were the first one that really focused on the consumer use case, you know, um, where we just made this like fun little game for folks to quickly like experiment on. So that took storm. Within hours, we got 150,000 transactions. So it broke the Coinbase facilitator for a few seconds. This is where that Soon's infrastructure comes in, right? So we ended up building our own version, a Soon version of the X402 facilitator to handle that peak overload. So like some of the technology there, very similar to how we build the SVM infrastructure for the chain, is using like batch transaction, parallel execution, is using, like a timed, so every 5 seconds slot, right, for processing. So it's not every single transaction that you have to kind of, process the block time, right? That delays the current transacting time. So yeah, so all these technical infrastructure is to say like we figured out a way to really handle like high frequency micropayments in short duration. So that's as far as like the infra piece is concerned, right? So on the chain side, we actually are currently partnering with Space, partnering with BNB to work with these guys, Solana, to really launch our applications onto these chains. So yeah, as I mentioned, like we kind of really pivoted from just be the infrastructure provider for other folks to build their own chains to be on the forefront of application layer and, taking user feedback directly and deploying them onto whichever chain that we believe has the right audience. And I think Base has been like a pretty big testing ground for us, just because that's where the initial enthusiasm came from as far as like AI and S42 is concerned. Yeah. So we've been working really closely with the Base team, with the CDP team, that's the Coinbase developer platform. First as the, like a bug, what do you call it? Like almost like a bug bounty. Yeah, basically unblocking that whole Coinbase facilitator issue. But then like that technical conversation turned into a more of a BD conversation, right? Like, we build a few products that they really helped us gather feedback.
Since you're not only on the infra side, but you probably have put a lot of thought into what applications will be built on Soon. Are you opinionated to any extent about what applications you would like to see? And
Yeah.
to span it a little wider, I think most of the context that agentic payments are talked about on the application layer is still not very differentiated what we have seen in crypto so far. So where would you say, in like what specific use cases and what specific applications do agentic payments actually bring new unlocks to the space?
Yeah. Great question. Yeah. This is really where I think the current kind of challenges reside, right? Um, the use case is very much focused on just the checkout flow. right? That's what everyone is familiar with. That's where I was talking about this whole enterprise, right? Like Stripe or Cloudflare, that type of use case come from. But yeah, I mean, this is certainly one use case that can bring in new people into the foray. But to your point, for like consumers today that's already in crypto, like what can we show them, right? To really bring people in. I think it's missing that consumer layer. Right? Specifically, my opinion here is to really focus on what we actually have PMF today in the crypto world, which is trading. I've played like different chains in the past, and I think what really made like trading specifically interesting is, now we have these infrastructure that can actually handle like in the DEX level, similar sort of block time, right? As a centralized exchange, right? So we actually getting kind of the centralized exchange benefit without the constraint of being in a centralized exchange, right? Obviously given our decentralization ethos and all. So all of that like is proven use case, and we haven't really tapped into using it. So what I have seen within our ecosystem that I'm really proud of is this experimentation specifically towards trading. And one example I can show you is basically mini perp. So that's like when I say mini perp, the mini section means it's a very ultra short time window based trading exercise. So I think the biggest, like honestly, onboarding, like what's the word I'm looking for? It's the biggest blocker today for onboarding people to perps is the UX, right? It's very complex. You have to be a professional to understand the funding rate, to understand the, how to watch your overnight risk, really kind of close your liquidation position when needed, so you don't do round trip, right? That kind of thing. Yeah. So for a newbie that doesn't understand perps, just show them how it can be done within 30 seconds. The agent itself is handling all the payment and the transfer logic. So it, auto kind of deduct the amount from your wallet. You only need to sign in the transaction at first to give proxy to the agent. And then it will calculate P&L in real time. And it actually also auto close your leverage within that 30 seconds, right? So again, no need to really watch your liquidation margin of that. And then it becomes very much of a fun game, right? So, going back to like our first experiment, I think this is really a next level, right? Like adding a leverage on top too. So yeah, so this was quickly a new experiment that took off. We had like about, 500 million transaction volume within 2 weeks for, new app that wasn't been around for that long. I think that was quite a good accomplishment. And then, yeah. And then I think the other side of the use case come from, how do we mimic things that we see in physical real world, and come up with a natural, like, product market fit for that, right? So a good example in this regard is we have another ecosystem project that started this first like AI generated red packet, right? That's a tradition in the Asian culture. During Lunar New Year or Chinese New Year, you have people that give these packets of value, right, monetary value to each other, to your friends, to your family. So as a way to bless them for the rest of the year. And again, that's something that just really have a natural PMF, given that like not everyone is going to be physically next to each other, right? I want to give you Max a red packet, but you're in Berlin, I'm in New York, and do that physically. So here is a way to do it faster. And by the way, it's even faster than, let's say a WhatsApp or, some Web2 tech, right? Because we're using on-chain high frequency, low latency tech. So it even rivals or does better than some of these Web2 existing tech, right? So that's the type of application we want to see, is to come up with this viral consumer surface that demonstrates a real need. Yeah.
What makes you so convicted on the consumer side of things? Because when I first heard about like agentic integration into on-chain transactions and into DeFi, it was mostly in the context of allocating into lending protocols, looking for optimized
Right.
yield, rebalancing capital. So mostly use cases where agents would be used to
To
automate and
automate.
abstract
Yeah.
away kind of the boring part of on-chain transaction that you don't really want to deal
Right.
with. So what do you think makes agents suitable for more viral and like the consumer side of use cases?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I think I had a similar thought process. I think that the issue is just going back to like how, x402 is being used today, right? And looking at the overall transaction happening using x402 is still quite muted, right? So this is like where the issue is, right? That we kind of been just testing the water with it and doing very minimum innovation, right? To replace part of the DeFi that's already working, the DeFi Legos that are already working. So what really will bring in new people to the space is like if we can, as mentioned, right, that Red Packet's a great example, like come up with a new use case that not only does better than like the traditional like physical sense, but actually does it better than the web to tech, right? Really kind of digging back deep into the roots of crypto, where payments, right, is peer-to-peer payments is it's a process of seconds, right? Like, I onboarded my mom to the red packet thing because she never touched crypto before, but she found it very easy to use as opposed to even using like WeChat, not WhatsApp, but the WhatsApp version in China. So I think that's what's powerful about S402, right? It's already a next frontier type of infrastructure that abstract away the infrastructure, the chain infrastructure. So, folks that are coming into the space for the first time will actually experience like all the benefits without having this burden of like learning everything from the ground, right? So yeah, so I think that's why like I really are very bullish on the consumer use case. Even this red packet thing, I was telling the team that they can make it more of a campaign tool going forward, like not just for one Lunar New Year holiday, but for many celebrations for, company anniversary, whatever, right? The situation might be, because it's really just it's a mechanism to send money and split money in randomized ways. So yeah, it's what's underneath that's powerful, but we have to think about the use case.
You've already alluded to the soon ecosystem a little bit with the mini perps, with the red packets. Could
Mhm.
you walk us through the apps that are currently live and
So this is like the under 1 minute send and receive user flow. Can you see, by the way?
yes.
Okay. Yeah, this is when I was sending 5 USDC to Jesse from Base. Yeah, I even showed him how to like log in the first place. Yeah, you just do one sign, and yeah, you can determine the parameters here, how many receivers, the total amount, the personalized message, and then you can choose between randomized versus fixed amount. Actually, for most people, I would suggest the random amount to increase the lock factor. And yeah, and then you can share that the code onto X, or can share directly with somebody through DM. Yeah. So yeah,
How does
very much.
how does that
Go ahead.
differ from a traditional crypto transaction? Just to make it
Mhm.
a little clearer where exactly the x402 angle comes in.
Yeah. So right now, this is still an agent to human transaction, right? And the agent just take care of the actual like back end of it, doing um, the actual like transferring the balance from your existing wallet to here, this newly created wallet, and then send it to all the subsequent, like here is like going into this like new wallet that will be claimed by people, right? Like it's all taken care of in the back end, like through the API. But what's really different is that, like in this case, you don't have to pay gas in base, or whatever, chain of your choice. And then you only did that one signage at the beginning to complete the entire transaction. So like it really doesn't feel like you're doing a transaction on chain. Like this whole process is very similar to to like a Web2 kind of existing, workflow, right? So that's the one big difference. And then I think the other difference is in the future, we can make this more like agent to agent payment, right? So like I'm making my whole team currently, everybody learning about AI, right? Yeah, in the future, like you can have agent claim these pockets, right? And then send it themselves to other agents. So there's coordination involved, and that can be done by OpenClaw.
What would you say is still missing to kind of complete the agentic payment integration in crypto? Like, where in that
Mm-hmm.
entire journey are we? Are we at the, to compare to the internet, are we like in the early innings of the 1990s where people had to manually set up these internet routers? Are we in the about to enter the .com boom? And what is your perceived timeline of how long it will take for agentic payments to evolve in their features, in their functionality, but also in their adoption and being used?
Wow, that's a loaded question. I definitely see this as the beginning of something like a Linux, right? It's as the foundation of the entire internet, right? When it was first introduced, it's an open source, first of all, open source technology. So anybody with development background, or actually, no, you don't even need the development background, right? You can just write code these days, can attempt to use it. And I think as far as like adoption, it's really going back to, finding use cases beyond just checkout flow, and making sure there's enough coordination among like different parties, right? So there still seems to be quite a bit of the race to the first, like winner takes all kind of mentality happening within, different chains, right? Everyone is trying to register like x402 as their new Twitter name for their whatever Twitter handles. But yeah, I think if we can all kind of abide by the fact that there is like a x402 foundation that's being built by Stripe, Coinbase, and Cloudflare, that is a nonprofit like open source foundation, and really kind of discourage that kind of take a, like basically break away from the differences and like put this adoption at the forefront, right? And really like for instance, you need to think about how to make it work with agent to agent use case, which is still a question mark, right? That's what we were just talking about, a lot of concerns about security side of things, right? If you just give kind of full access to the agent to manage your keys, right? To manage the rights to access, for instance, your email, right? For instance, your Twitter account, like, doing any sort of content generating on your behalf, right? Speaking on your behalf. So I think there's quite a bit of technical debt that we still have to figure out. But on the same in the meantime, we need to really figure out the use cases that can bring this into everyday use case, right? So one really interesting perspective, I was just talking to my friend Namil at the YC, who was the one of the three creators of x402 from Coinbase. Just like even just somebody come up with a way to do like grocery shopping for you, right? Just like I'm looking at my fridge right now, and all the stuff that I bought this week, it will track all the usage for me if I take a photo with it, and then share that with my AI, and then the AI can just figure out where to buy these things on a repeated pattern quickly and cheaply. That's the kind of use case we want to see. It's right now, it's just like being such a, your point exactly, right? Like it's such a buzzword that doesn't really mean anything to like everyday use case. Yeah.
What is your current go-to-market strategy like, and where do you think growth is going to come from? Is it more, okay, there's an existing consumer brand, now they want to do something on-chain, or do you think that in contrast, there will be a whole new demand, a whole new
Yeah.
landscape of brands created by on-chain native firms, products, and consumer
Hmm.
applications.
Yeah. So my biggest go to market is that we need to continue to ship, and it's never been easier to ship with vibe coding and with AI, right? So my philosophy here is, and this is really consistent with everything that we've been doing as soon, right? Uh, we want to reach that mass adoption, and you can't do that without building that killer app, right, on top of your infrastructure to demonstrate the technology. So, when we couldn't really incubate the right teams to do so, we ended up doing ourselves, right, to start building an application ourselves. And now the innovation bar has just been lowered tremendously by AI, right? So each team member within the Soon team is tasked to build their own, or actually encouraged. I mean, not everybody has to do it because, we do ask all the developers to come up with one product, but even the marketing guys, you guys can also come up with some new ideas and ask the developer team to help. So basically, yeah, everyone can build their own product and we'll deploy all our resources towards that, right? So if you think about it, Soon is becoming more of a factory of startups. And because it's still early days, right? We don't know what that killer app is. The best you can do is to keep experimenting. And even in our own journey, we realized maybe some of the product is just more viral than the others, right? Like the 10S was, wow, within hours we already like broke the internet, so to speak, maybe versus some of the other applications. So you just have to keep experimenting. The cost of it is so low. If we can continue to ship these products, every month, every quarter with good quality, I really believe that, Soon is going to continue to sit at the forefront of that innovation layer and attracting more users into the space.
You also have a Soon token. Where does
Yeah.
that come into play? And maybe also you can talk about the evolution of the token. Maybe it had a different purpose back when you were still a Solana L2 and how it has
No,
evolved
no.
going to fit into the X402 stack.
Yeah, actually, no. I think the whole pivot kind of happened because of the token itself, right? So we have have been very clear on, um, defending the token itself it's a product, right? It may sound controversial, but it's very true, right? When you have done the TGE, when you have done the fundraising from the public, then basically your kind of entire product roadmap has to tailor towards like how do we incentivize and motivate the token holders, right? So yeah, so when you look at the different incentives why we ended up doing what we're doing, I think the one big part of it I haven't talked about is just understanding the sequencer revenue is declining overall, right? Not just for Soon, but in general, we're looking at the L2 space, even L1 space, the sequencer revenue, the chain revenue is shrinking. So how do we continue to accrue value back to the token holder is to come up with new revenue streams, right? So as an application builder, this is where, let's say specifically for this X402 mini perp, right? That I haven't shown you guys yet, but it's called 100x Soon. So, you can just basically receive revenue from the X402 facilitator. That's the underlying kind of like validator for the X402 network. You can receive the revenue from the trading fee, and then there's also a bit of a chain revenue that we can get from the chain itself, right? So in general, now we can actually accrue all this value back to the token holder. We continue to get people to like try out these new products. If they're a token holder, there's certain discounts, it's certain referral fees, right, that we can pay them. So, there's basically all the benefit to be our alpha trader or beta users, right? So the way that we determine that is by if you're already kind of a Soon coin user, right, or believer. So that's why I think in the general scheme of things, we're trying to create this flywheel, right? Where revenue is generating on one side through all these applications, and then the token on the other side. So when we can actually move one to influence the other, right? Like revenue generating can feed back into the token, and then the token itself can feed back to the revenue generating by all these incentivizing all these people to use the application, right? There's also obviously like all the additional features that we are exploring through the governance side with no token burning and buying back. But I think in general, like now we have additional lever we can pull, right? To make sure that everybody know when they're no matter where you're participating within the ecosystem can continue to participate in the upside.
How do you think economics and the types of value accrual will be changed by agentic commerce and agentic payments? If we think this
Mm,
entire development a few steps further, maybe a little more than a few steps, but just to use it as a thought example, in
sure.
theory, at some point in time, AI will be able to synthesize enough data. So the marginal value of data should collapse towards zero. Some people would argue that from that follows that also the marginal value of software, because it has become so abundant, will collapse to zero. So, in such a scenario, I know that there can be like Steelman's arguments be made against this. Where do you personally view all of this going, and where do you think value will accrue towards in the future, and how do you plan to capture it?
When you say the value will collapse to zero, what's the reasoning behind that?
Well, basically, if agents get really good at coding stuff for you,
Oh, you're
there is
saying
no
it
inherent value
replace
in
the
software
human?
anymore. I think
I see.
the kind of the steel man to that is that, well, since software is in turn then so important because now even more aspects of our lives are enabled and like executed through software and through agents, it should retain some type of value. But a scenario that I could imagine is that, yes, everybody knows and agrees that there is some value in it, but nobody knows how to price it. Somewhat similar to like crypto layer ones and their tokens.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody can agree that something like Ethereum or something like Solana having a credible, neutral execution environment that is at least like to some extent censorship resistant, etc., there is some value to it. But there is the question of where does value actually accrue? How can you measure it and how can you price it?
Mm. Oh wow. Let me think about this. So I think the argument here is that um the value accrue is that you free the human up, right, for innovation. It's kind of going back to my point of how I'm running the organization right now is that like we used to have these big marketing, daily stand-ups meetings. So everybody, yeah, goes around to talk about like what they need to do in the day. But now we can just almost like don't do that and just have a in sync conversation in our group chat, and then tagging our agents, right, to like do most like 60% of those work. So um yeah, I think the point is like the humans will become a manager, like almost like managing these interns, right? to do the task for you. You still need to train it, right? The agent doesn't have all the pre-existing knowledge without the training, right? You still have to give them the right prompt so it doesn't like do and this happens so often. I'm like really annoyed by some of these like, yeah, I'm trying to build more skills because I feel like skill is the only way to standardize these prompts. Yeah, so the agent can have like a consistent answer. But you also have to like free yourself for the bigger, better things. So the value really comes back to, can human really become more innovative because the agent is taking away the mundane tasks? What do you think the answer?
Well, I mean, ideal scenario would be to move somewhere closer to the ideal of a like Greek philosopher king, that we
Mhm.
return to the fundamentals of what it means to be human, which is like kind of a revival of the countryside and like people engaging more in like farming,
Yeah.
acquiring food.
Yeah.
not necessarily for the sake of physical labor itself. But now, one of my base theses about the modern world is that most white collar jobs are really not made to be executed by humans. It's just like it is an entirely self
Right.
created system. And I do not think that this is necessarily in line and optimized for our nature of what we are. We like to think, we like to philosophize as humans. Some people like that more, some people like that less. And I do
Right.
think that if we want to engage in non-physical and purely mental work, it is more suitable to do it from that angle rather than to like
Hmm.
Excel sheets or, polish PowerPoint presentations, etc. I think a lot of these functions, I really wouldn't mind to see them disappear in the sense of
Yeah.
not being executed by humans anymore. I do think that if we really think the whole AI economy a few steps further, we will get to a, let's say, value accrual crisis where we can all agree, kind of what I
Interesting.
alluded to earlier, that certain sectors, certain functions, even if wholly executed by agents, of course, still constitute a lot of value because they, you know, they enable other agents to optimize for certain consumer decisions, for allocation decisions. They solve coordination problems between humans. It's not like all of this will mutually cancel out and like collapse towards zero. But since the agents basically, if we figure out how to provide abundant energy, there
Hmm.
is no marginal cost to the agent, or almost no marginal cost to like the
Right.
marginal prompt and token usage of the agent. And the agent also doesn't have any like quality of life or cost of living demands on his own. So like it doesn't really cost us anything. And the
Right.
agent
It
doesn't
will
really
work for
require
you
to be paid
24/7.
anything. Yeah,
Yeah.
it
Without
works
rest.
24/7 and it basically works for free. So now
Yeah.
you have a labor force that doesn't cost you anything and that doesn't even require any type of payment. And
Hmm.
since it doesn't require any type of payment and it doesn't consume anything, it also doesn't funnel anything back into the economy. So I do think the kind of, I mean, that gets really, really philosophical right now, but I do think that the kind of the neoliberal perspective and like the neoclassical perspective on economics in an agentic economy that cannot hold anymore. Because particularly if you look at the US, I mean, most Western nations are very consumerism driven. I think the US
Hmm.
is kind of the
Hmm.
most extreme example of that.
Yeah.
It is a profit driven society. It is like the utility of any function of any business of like any role that you play in society is primarily measured through profit. And that approach worked amazing until now. But I do think if we get to a point where, especially most of the service economy, that is not like physical services, but rather digital services, consulting, etc.
Don't forget about the robots. They can do the physical tasks
Yeah, I mean they will, but I do think that will take a few years longer than
more.
like
Yeah.
all
More
the
time
white collar
too.
jobs. But
Correct.
I think
Correct.
already if we just take away a lot of the white collar jobs, we'll easily get to a point in time where nobody knows what to value with what approach anymore. I think the
Hmm.
Citrini research article from a week or two ago that brought up a pretty good discussion. It kind of hints on that 2028 intelligence crisis where you basically outsource a lot of the stuff that is highly paid right now. You know, if you look at product managers at Google or like Netflix or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
you can basically collapse the cost of these functions close to zero. So like who's getting paid and how does that money flow back into the economy. So I do think
But
we really need to figure out like I think it sounds a little grand to speak of a new way to coordinate
measure
society.
the
I mean,
the
essentially that's what
credits,
it is.
right? Yeah. Yeah. So sorry. I just wanted to. I agree with everything except the fact that the AIs are not bringing any value back to the society. It's actually bringing value quite a lot back to these AI company, right? The LM model builders. Just looking at how many credits I'm paying this like
Yeah.
Claude, Anthropic, right? All these open AI, right? Like on a daily basis. So it is actually paying like a certain part of the society, just not in a way that I think you and me are familiar with, or even just from a philosophical
Yeah.
perspective is not as like broadly distributed as it needs to be. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's like lots of open questions on how the coordination of all of this will go forward. In
Right.
retrospect, I'm kind of glad that, I mean, I saw the recent Bankless podcast with Hosip, where he argues that
Mhm.
crypto and blockchain is more suitable to be used by agents than by humans. And I absolutely agree
Agree.
with him on that. Still, I'm pretty happy that we first tried to make crypto mainstream before trying to make AI mainstream. Because now we are, even
Good
though like
point.
we have
Yeah.
all of these like meaning crises and whatever
Yeah.
value accrual crises within the crypto industry, and like if it's all just speculation or if it's not, blah blah, and if it's actually decentralized, now this technology is in place. And now we can, if we want to, force all the like agentic rails to be run on crypto. Whereas
Yeah.
the other way around, like AI, I agree that AI is a naturally centralizing technology. If we had first seen all the AI mainstreaming and the breakthrough of that technology before blockchains as like credibly
That's a really
neutral and
good point. It would just become centralized.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it is much easier now to kind of go down a path where we can like keep the rules in check and somehow keep that entire thing, technology in check, rather than if it had happened the other way around. That's still not
Hmm.
a guarantee for success, but like at least there is a chance to do it the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. Now the AI company have seen like what blockchain can handle, right? In terms of, you know, the TVL that has run through the blockchain in terms of like all the big organizations that are trusting or blockchain to safeguard their assets, right? Then yeah, it becomes more of a POV for, sorry, is that the right word I'm looking for? The proof of concept, POC for the AI use case. Yeah, I like that a lot. That's a very optimistic note, right? Let's end on that.
It is. I think it is very, very path dependent. There, even if you
Exactly.
look at, I mean, you could make the argument, okay, the world is kind of fractured anyway. There's lots of geopolitical tensions. There's eroding trust in institutions, eroding trust between nations, etc. So that, in
Hmm.
theory, should incentivize everybody to look for a credibly neutral technology to like run all of that coordination on, because that kind of forces but also enables everybody to play by the same rules. But I think you could also
Yeah.
turn that same observation around by 180 degrees and argue that okay, there is like, you know, breaking order anyway. So now everybody will try to grab power and to centralize it as much as possible because people want
Hmm.
to like cling onto the like little rest of power that they have left and they want to expand it again. So I think you can turn it either way. I don't know which scenario will obviously turn out, but I mean I obviously hope for the former. I guess that everybody building in crypto is hoping for the former, but yeah, it's to be seen how it will play out.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Let's keep the hope up, right? That, um, we'll go towards a better place. Yeah.
Yeah. And since we're getting closer to the hour, do you want
Hmm.
to share your outlook for soon in
Hmm.
2026? Maybe
Yeah.
what metrics you're aiming for and looking at, and yeah, what the state of soon will be at the end of
The
the year.
2026. I think, yeah, coming back to that argument that we wanted to become like the factory of startups, right? So, one of the key metrics is to keep measuring how many apps are being shipped out and the usage on each of them. I'm looking at like even just the Artemis, that's the one of the dashboard that's tracking x402 usage. Like it has been showing a decline of x402 usage since December last year, right? So obviously we're in a bear market. You can blame a lot of people for it, but I really think um, the demand picture is shifting if you look past that absolute transaction amount, but focus on like growth quality and stickiness. So yeah, so we want to continue to track these numbers and see, how many like active buyers and sellers are transacting on X402, not only just the number of transactions and the different use cases that can generate, more stickiness in real usage over time.
Where can people find you, and where can they check out?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, I would love to have more folks just following the 100x soon project, right? That's the ecosystem project that developed a mini perp. So you can go to their website. Sorry, give me 1 second to check. It's just 100xsoon.com. Yeah. So that's the website. And then you can also follow their Twitter, which is, let me see if I can show you, share my screen here. For us, the soon one, it will be just soon SVM, like this, at soon underscore SVM. That's the one. And then for the 100x, the handle is 100x soon underscore EN. Yeah.
Perfect. We'll make sure to put all the links in the podcast description. It was great having you
Appreciate
on,
it.
Joanna. And yeah, hopefully see you soon again on the pod to continue philosophizing about
Yeah.
the.
I love how this conversation turned so philosophical at the end and really forced me to think about the primitives, right? That we're building towards. Do we really want to have more agents? Are
Yeah.
we actually replacing ourselves? Are we
And whenever
recruiting
we talk
values?
about vibe
Yeah.
coding or x402 on the pod,
Mm-hmm.
the longer we talk, it always took some kind of angle like that
Yeah.
before we progress in the conversation, because I think the discrepancy between people who are using this stuff and like see it being built and improving day by day, and like the large majority of people who have no clue at all that this stuff even exists, like this
Yeah.
is much greater than it is with crypto, because I think that in the like day-to-day observations,
Mm-hmm.
agents will be like orders of magnitude more impactful and like noticeable than blockchain tech. But yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see how it will turn out. Well, it was
Yeah.
great having you on, and yeah,
Thank you, Max. Yeah. Great having you on the call. Thank you.
thanks for coming on.
Talk to you soon.